Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
I was in Prince Edward County. I was on my way back from Ottawa because I was there for the book expo, and a friend of mine has a place in Prince Edward County, so I rented it for a few days to get some writing done, but also to help break up the drive. And I had zero cell service the entire time I was there. Mm-hmm. The power was in and out. The internet was in and out. And I was incommunicado.
You're back home.
Exactly.
You're safe.
Yes.
It's good.
Yeah, but you know what? It actually, because it wasn't long term, it was actually nice not to be able to use the phone for a few days.
Yeah, it was a growth experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it was good. Sometimes it's nice not to be reached, but I felt terrible that like in mid sentence, like everything just went off, and I was just like, what?
So now we have to see how this is going to be, how this is going to shape and evolve. And on the curve of experience, this has never happened.
Okay.
Do you want to go back to the photo, or do you want to just take up from where we were?
Yeah, let's pick up from where we were. Yeah. I was on a podcast like during the pandemic where my phone kept cutting out. Mm-hmm. And I had to keep calling back. And the guy, like, there was like dead air that he had to fill. And I'm like, are you going to edit this? And he's like, no, that's too time consuming.
That's awesome. Okay, I will edit a little. Okay.
Well, even if you don't, it's okay. I've done it all.
Okay. Well, just to jump back in, the photo was called "The Theater Is My Temple."
Yes.
How about you can you remember the photo?
Yes, I do remember the photo. I took it when I was in Verona in Italy. Mm-hmm. And I was in Europe. I was at the Cannes Film Festival with one of my films, with a short film that I did. And after the festival, I decided to take a week and visit Italy. It might have been more than a week. Maybe it was 2 weeks, because I went to Florence, Verona, Venice, and Milan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that I took that photo in Verona. It was so beautiful. And so, yes, getting back to the theater, I'm imagining the trip right now. That's and imagining great. The space and that particular venue. So, yeah, the theater is my temple, because from the beginning of time, the theater existed in a religious setting in ancient Greece and Rome. And it was part of their religious festivals, these Dionysian festivals, and they would put on plays. And that's how they would describe the stories of the gods, explaining nature, explaining, our purpose and what we're doing here. And over thousands and thousands of years, whatever religion, pick any religion, but most temples have some sort of stage or altar in the center or the front. Yep. And it's on that stage that we discuss difficult topics. We talk about what our purpose is. We talk about what our fears are, we basically talk about our lives and how we connect to something greater than ourselves. And I think that's what the purpose of theater is.
Jen, you're so in terms of my world of training and what we call service leadership, is this notion that one huge component about you as a service leader is giving yourself to something that is bigger than yourself, right? Like that touches a deeper need. And I mean, maybe it's a cliche and it's quite common to make the connection between theater and temples or sites or the sacred. But, you had said this last time and it stayed in my head. So when you're walking in a space like this that is clearly hundreds or 1,000+ years old, and you're like looking around going, okay, there were people like me just 1,000 years ago having moving experiences. How do you feel incorporating that space as somebody who's really learned about theater and learned about communicating story?
Any theater is a sacred space to me, just like any place of worship would be a sacred space to me, regardless of if it was my religion or somebody else's. Those are sacred spaces. And I believe the theater is also a sacred space because we're actually able, especially today, when we live in a society that's completely polarized, and we're being forced onto one side or the other. There's something happening. There's something in the ether right now where there's no gray areas anymore, which is ridiculous because the whole world is one gray area. And I feel like the theater is a place that's almost a sanctuary where you can discuss these taboo topics that would get you canceled in real life, because you can create characters from both sides of the spectrum, and you can have these characters interact. And one of my favorite quotes of all times is from George Bernard Shaw, the famous playwright. And he said that theater will always exist because society will always have the need to reflect on itself. And the theater, unlike film and television, is not mass media.
Right.
You are only catering to a very finite number of people that can fit into your theater. And your production is usually going on for a limited amount of time. There are the anomalies, like, I think Agatha Christie's Mousetrap has been running over 50 years in London, but that's the exception. And even the shows on Broadway that run years at a time, compared to the number of productions that are going on a year, that's like the 1%. Those Broadway shows that run for years are the 1%.
Yeah.
And then there's the next tier down, which is like the 10% that, maybe run and tour and go to different places in the world. But a lot of these plays just get a 6-week run and never really go anywhere from there. And these are small theaters in the East Village or, out in North Hollywood that don't attract these huge masses of people, but they're definitely tackling subjects that are important and that wouldn't get an opportunity to be voiced on a larger scale.
So the notion of a temple, when you go in and you're presented with taboo subjects, as you said, or
well, taboo today is just being on the wrong side of politics.
Right.
Depending on who you're talking to.
Okay. This is what happens on the podcast. Like, I'll have people over who've spent years, like their brain has been in one area, like tin welding or something. Something really that I know nothing about. And okay, I've done a bit of stage stuff, and I've thought a lot about what it's like to be on stage and to be perceived by an audience. To inhabit your head, to understand like the connection of what's the magic of theater, because connecting the word sacred and the temple and.
Well, let's start off with ritual.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So when we go to a temple, there's a ritual. In terms of, we know when we walk into this space, we're going to alter our behavior in a certain way. Whether you're going to a church or a temple, a mosque, a synagogue, before you go in the door, you prepare yourself in a different way. You probably will even dress a different way to show respect, because you're going to connect with a higher spiritual power. So not that we're going to theater to connect with a higher spiritual power, but there is kind of a ritual. And depending on the venue of the theater, people do tend to get a little dressed up. And then they come in and they sit down, and there's an etiquette that everybody follows, just like an etiquette when you go to temple,
Mm-hmm.
whether, in temple, it's, you stand up for certain prayers, you kneel for certain prayers, you bow your head, you go take communion, there's certain rituals that happen. And in the theater, there's definitely rituals for both the performers and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Even the cues of applauding or
Yeah.
standing up for a standing ovation, or everybody's silent, nobody really talks, phones have to go off, and especially like as soon as the lights dim, the hush comes over the
Yep.
crowd. So there are not the same rituals, but there's definitely a ritualistic, kind of format of
Mm-hmm.
going to the theater. And definitely for the actors, there's
Right.
rituals that we do before we get on the stage, there's rituals we do to prepare. There are rituals, just with us connecting as a team before we go on. There are
Mm-hmm.
certain, like a lot of productions, like we'll do a power circle before we
Right.
do the play, and we have to make sure that we have time to do the power circle because there's a little bit of superstition
Yep.
involved and things
Yep.
like that. And I really do. The plays that have endured, the theater pieces that have endured over time, are ones that offer the audience some sort of either catharsis, spiritual experience, inspiration, something that gets them out of themselves.
Sure. As just you're talking and I'm thinking and making connections. So, as somebody who's been on the stage and who is doing the kind of the action of bringing life to a script or whatever it is that is meant to elicit a reaction in the receiver, the viewer, or the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you describe a moment or time where you're really conscious of a kind of a change in the room where all the ingredients were just right, that it almost felt like a mystical experience? Either you could talk about a time when you went and you were in the audience, but I think it's even more interesting to find out, have you ever been on stage where it's like you transcended the moment of
Yes. Yes. And I'm going to quote Danny DeVito, the actor.
I
No,
love it.
because he describes it, and this is the best way I've ever heard an actor describe it. He
Uh-huh.
describes it as when you're working and all of a sudden your feet lift up off the ground
Yeah.
because you're no longer based in the reality of like the world that we
Mm-hmm.
live in, but all of a sudden your feet lift off the ground and the reality of the world of the play becomes so real for you. It's like you're
Mm.
floating. Exactly. It becomes this kind of transcendence. And I have had a couple of experiences like that on stage. The first time, I'll talk about the first time that ever happened for me. I played a really challenging role. I was living in New York. I was 25, and at this point, like, this was like the biggest opportunity I had had in my career. And I was playing a mentally challenged girl who ends up getting raped and murdered. And the
Mm.
rape scene was on stage.
Oh wow.
And I just, I remember like just something taking over my body, and just like sounds coming out of me that I'm like, where are these things? You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
way my body was stiffening and reacting and the sounds. And it was actually interesting because the producer of the show only watched the entire play once.
Oh.
And I got, and I started noticing that he would leave after the first half of the play because we were doing the show, several shows a week for several weeks. And I remember, after that first week, I went to the director and I said, what's going on? Like, because I guess I just let this thing
Mm-hmm.
take over me, and it wasn't really conscious anymore. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
do your prep, you do your backstory, you walk yourself through these emotional, like you build these fake emotional memories, but you build them in a way that you can recall them, and they help you trigger the moment on stage. And the director said, "Oh, yeah," he said, "he just can't watch you do that more than once. It's just too much." And I was like, "Oh," because I thought he thought I sucked. I'm like, "What? I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm like working so hard out there. What's going on?" But that was what we were trying to achieve.
Sure, of course.
Like that torturous, like blood curdling scene. And so that was definitely one of the first times, because that was the most challenging role. It was my biggest role at that point.
Yeah.
You don't get offered everything the day you show up.
No, of course,
it takes a few years, until you actually get meatier roles or bigger parts and stuff. So that definitely was one of them. And then there was another project I was working on a few years later, and I remember, sorry, I'm just recalling this.
I can see it on your, for the listener, I can see on her face that Jen is losing herself at the moment. And I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I just noticed I'm staring off into space, and you're just like, what is she doing?
No. It's, because in my head, when that happened, I was like, we're going to need some kind of palate cleanser to go from the rape of a challenged young woman on stage to the next photo.
Yes. Yeah. So let me do, so no, but even like, there were even times, there was another production that I was working on where I was playing a love scene, and the guy who was playing my boyfriend, like in real life, he's gay.
Yeah.
And, so obviously not attracted to me, like,
sure.
But we were able to conjure this chemistry that was just that, like, I was confused when we finished. I was like, did we have something?
It was acting, darling. It was just acting.
Yeah, but sometimes it gets really real.
No, for sure. Well, that line is not a line.
Yeah, it's true. And, and that's the other thing too. I think almost every actor I've had intense moments with at work, they've stayed in my life for some reason, because it's like you hit, even though the script is not real, the connection between the two souls,
for sure,
is real.
Well, yeah, you created a powerful anchor in your own shared human experience that connects you.
Yes, exactly.
Shall we go on to the next photo?
Sure. Yes, let's move on.
Jen, what are you doing? Like we just went straight out the gate. Boom.
I know. Well,
I love it.
I'm a lot to handle.
No, this is just right.
Okay, good.
So I love the fact that this period of time happens where we meet, we make one connection, time happens, life happens, we come back. And then these anchors are your photos. So it's just like, yeah. But for me, it's just like, oh, okay. So it's called Head in the Clouds. And it's shot through the window of a jet. And there are all these beautiful, beautiful clouds over what seems to be ocean. I think it's over ocean. It's not just one empty kind of field, but there are lots of broken up clouds. It's very magical. And I think as humans, we take for granted that, we're going to fly over to London or fly out to Hong Kong or whatever and just cross the planet. But it's astounding to be able to see that kind of sight. So your head in the clouds, do tell.
Yeah, I believe I took that photo just on one of my one of the flights I was on. I don't even think it was like going to Europe or anywhere crazy, but I just looked out the window and I think there's like some hues of pink and some
Mm-hmm.
different colors in the sky. And like you said, it was just such a magical image and I wanted to capture it. I am pretty fascinated by clouds in the sky. I'm looking up a lot of the times and I'm always seeing different shapes in the clouds. And I feel very inspired when I look up
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a reminder of, don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm.
There's way bigger things out there than me and my very myopic view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I love things that remind me that, being self involved too much of the time doesn't serve me, nor does it
Mm-hmm.
serve anyone around me.
Right.
So that's what that represents. So the head in the clouds thing, and also like on the flip side of the coin, I am such a daydreamer. So when I was a child, my mother would always tell me my head was in the clouds, and
Right.
I never had a problem with that. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is. I'm a dreamer, I'm a creative, I'm a writer. My head is in the clouds.
Okay, so one of the things that okay, so I moved to Hong Kong, and for the first few years, having this crisis of like moving there from Montreal, where Montreal was super creative, going to Hong Kong, which is super commercial, and it's
Very
just
business oriented,
yeah,
very bottom
yeah.
line, right?
And in my work later, one of the things that we started realizing was that the mindset that helps people get out of the mud is one that basically focuses on your competence and just basically your actions and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is that the sides of your personality, which are, for example, your tendency to dream or your creative side, or the less sort of pragmatic, like in countries like Canada and the US, where people have the extra leisure and the extra resources to actually sit back and go, okay, well, what do I want to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's more space to dream and to look at the sky. And so for a place like Hong Kong, which is all, or was for the longest time, it was all about making a buck.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that release of self-discovery. So take us back to when you were a kid, because the fact that you'd walk around staring in the cloud, in the sky, and whatever, how much did your parents suffer that, indulge it, or encourage it?
Okay, you touched on a couple of really interesting things.
I have a tendency to talk for a while, and then the person goes, "I think what you mean.
No,
I don't know."
no.
So you figure it out.
So the first thing you talked about, I'm going to get to my
Yeah,
parents
sure,
and when I was
perfect.
younger in a second. But when you were talking about when people are stuck, is putting that, what helps them get out of it is something tangible that they can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that 100%. So I used to be an athlete, and one of my saving graces is when I feel like I'm spinning out.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't have control, when I'm not getting the calls, or I'm getting this getting rejected, like my book was rejected so many
Mm-hmm.
times before it actually got out into the world. I'm so grateful to be able to do something physical and feel
Yeah.
strong physically, because when you're in your head, you can spin out and feel helpless, and there's nothing that can ground you. So, doing exercises, whether it's going on a hike, doing a hard yoga class, even like doing some push ups, or, holding a handstand against the wall for 2 minutes, like whatever it is, really helps me ground myself and come
Yep.
back come back
Mm-hmm.
down to reality and be like, okay, my feet are on the ground, I am in this room, I like
Yep.
physically I am capable, I'm a capable person. Like my brain might not be able to figure out this particular problem at this particular moment, but that's just a very small facet of of my essence, of who I
Yeah,
am,
of your experience.
of
Yeah,
my
yeah, for sure.
experience, you know.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that about, like, you know, doing something physical. And then in terms of the dreaminess, so you are 100% right about living in the West. We have the luxury of being able
Mm-hmm.
to dream. So I'm half Tunisian. My mother is from Tunis, Tunisia.
Oh, wow.
So I'm first generation on my mother's side. I'm second generation on my father's side. My father's family's from Poland.
Oh.
So my grandparents had no choice. They came as immigrants and they had to do whatever it took to scrape by. They had to they came here, they had to learn the language, they had to learn the culture, they had to learn how to assimilate, raising family, raising kids. My family, my mother's side of the family are 6 kids.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
nobody even has 6 kids today. And
Except for the Australians.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's different. Well, that's the thing. People
Yeah.
coming from other countries, immigrants have six
Right.
kids.
Right. Right. Right.
Canadian citizens don't,
Sure. Sure.
you know, as common, you know. And then my mother was also an immigrant. She was born outside of the country. So she also didn't have the luxury. She had a little more agency than her parents did because
Mm-hmm.
she came as a young person as opposed to coming as an adult. So, but she still had to learn the language, had to learn the culture. So there's a disadvantage. And also, she had to go to work. She had to go work in the family business. She didn't have the luxury of going to university.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she started to go to York, and then her father said, "No, I need you to come. Like, I need you
Mm-hmm.
to come and help. The business is growing, and I need more help." And that's just what you did.
Yep.
So the fact that I was born in Canada, that alone gives me a huge privilege and a huge advantage in terms of being able to decide, like, okay, I'm not going to get a regular job. I am not
Mm.
going to, you know, go sit in an office. I'm a creative and I'm going to honor that and nurture that and go for that. I've definitely had a dozen regular jobs. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, I've worked in offices, I've done all of that, but that's always been the side hustle.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
never been the forefront of my life. But I definitely agree that I never would have had any of those opportunities had my family not built a foundation for me
Sure.
that
Yep.
allowed me to be the dreamer. And you know, and it's funny because I did pretty well in school, and I had an aptitude for athletics. So I was an athlete for many years of my life,
Mm.
and yeah, and I think both my parents, you know, just like every generation, you want to give your children more than you
Yep.
had. You want
Yep.
to give them more opportunities. You want to give them more fun. You want to give them more education. So I benefited from that. And definitely, my parents were hard on me. My parents were very strict. Like, there was no
Mm-hmm.
such thing, like, you know, B's were not acceptable in
Mm-hmm.
school,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, so in terms of academics and just, you know, cleaning up after myself, making sure the dishes were washed, the beds were made every morning, you know, we had our responsibilities. um, but I definitely was given, I was given the opportunity to dream also.
But it's also great that you're able to get off the track of the functional dimension, which is okay. I am a working unit, and my hands and feet together work to produce labor that is, 7 hours a day, and they go into a factory and all that stuff. But then you're like, no, no, no. We're just gonna. They worked really hard, so you can separate yourself from that and make your own meaningful life, like make your own sort of
Mm-hmm.
understanding of just life by going into something that some people would say is quite frivolous, which is theater. And
Yeah.
writing, writing. Some people say, well, you could be a writer, But an actor, typically, it's like if we think negatively about actors, it's like they're paid to, or not paid, their livelihood is to inhabit and pretend to be not themselves.
Yes. And sorry,
Take
go
it away.
ahead. No, I
No,
interrupted
no,
you.
no, please. It's all
Yes.
about you.
So yeah, like both my parents worked very hard. My father was in construction. Well, he still is. He's semi-retired because he's older now. And
Mm-hmm.
I like last year, I think I like yelled at him. He like lifted a steel door and hurt himself. And I'm like, why are you lifting? You're too old to lift anything. Why are you lifting things? And my mom had a bakery for over 20
Wow.
years and then retired to take care of her mom when her mom got sick.
Wow.
So everybody worked really hard. When I say I benefited from the privilege of being born in Canada, and I saw my parents struggle. I saw them work hard. I saw them struggle. So I always had a really good work ethic.
Mm-hmm. I
Sorry.
have to make, sorry, so the reason why I'm making all these sounds like I'm interrupting is because the way the world and life is, I find myself moving from Hong Kong back to Canada. I now live in Vancouver. I have two roommates, which is a really weird thing to be like pushing 50 and then having roommates. And one of my roommates is an actor in movies and TV and stuff. And so when people say, "Oh yeah, like you say, like my parents worked really hard and whatever," the life you have is really hard. It is not given.
Yeah.
It is really hard.
Yeah, and that's a lot of my friends acknowledge. Like I work harder than anyone they know.
It's tough.
I'm not partners at a law firm. I'm not a doctor. I'm not curing cancer. But when people have cancer and they're going through chemo, when they're at home, what do? They watch movies.
Exactly.
They watch movies to make them feel better. They watch movies to distract them from their own, situation. And it's funny because, yes, on the one hand, everybody thinks it's frivolous until I pose one question. This is my favorite question when people try and diminish what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen a movie or read a book or heard a song that changed your life? Across the board, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are all affected. We are affected by great movies. We are affected by great books. We are affected by great songs. And these become important factors in our lives. They help inspire us. How many of us put on a specific playlist when we need to go hard or when we're in the car going to an important interview? How many of us will put on a movie because we need to relate to what that character is going through at that moment, or we need to laugh, or we need to get outside of our heads. And I like quoting people. So one of my favorite authors is Tom Robbins. And in his book, Still Life with Woodpecker, one of the quotes is, "The purpose of the artist is to create or is to provide that which life does not."
Nice.
And artists have purpose. We have purpose in the world. I will defend that till the day I die. And maybe I haven't hit my stride yet, and maybe I haven't hit that masterpiece yet. And yes, not every actor has a shot at that great role or will ever do a great movie or a great play. But until you try, you never know.
Yes. All I could say is yes, yes, yes. I'm so behind you.
Thank you.
I completely agree, because when I ask people the similar question, which is, has anybody in the world ever looked at a copyright law decision that didn't bring them to tears? I mean, who says no? Sorry. I'm an idiot. Yes. Okay.
No, it's hilarious.
Okay,
it's
but
hilarious.
You're totally right. Head in the clouds. I love it. I love it. And I love the energy and the fact that you. Are we going to talk about your book?
Sure.
Okay, should we move on to the next photo? Have you set this up? Is the next photo gonna? Because I want to talk about your book as well.
Yeah. Well, whatever you want. I'm game.
So you're gonna have to help me with this one.
Okay.
So it's called New York State of Mind.
Oh, okay.
So the photograph is one of the, I guess, the subways, outdoor train subways, kind of
above ground in Queens,
ground.
facing
In Queens.
New York City with the city skyline behind the subway. Is that
how long ago was this? Because I think I can see the what's it called, the not the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm.
But is this post or before 9/11?
Oh, that's after 9/11, but
Yeah.
I'm sure, but it's over 10 years old, so I'm sure the
Okay.
skyline has changed considerably.
For sure.
Yeah, New York has so many buildings that are almost twice the size of the Chrysler Building now. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, on Billionaire Row, they have all these crazy, huge buildings.
So in the photographs, like 1/3 of it is sky with clouds. So it's beautifully composed. Whoever made the photo knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's afternoon lights, and there's like a train going across, and the shadows kind of really make that train pop. It's kind of greenish. There's the skyline in the background. It looks like it's fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fall. Yeah. Very observant.
Thank you. I'm using my eyes. Okay, so
really, you're not looking at the photo with your feet?
yeah, there you go. So New York State of Mind, Jen, you're setting us up. What are you setting us up toward?
Oh, I'm just always nostalgic towards New York. Like,
okay.
New York. So I moved to New York right after university. I very much maintain that New York is where I became who I am.
Okay.
I lived at home when I went to York.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised quite sheltered, religious private schools, being carpooled. I lived outside of the city in an isolated area, so I couldn't even walk and take the bus. That just wasn't an option. So New York is where I was finally able to spread my wings. I was able to find my creative compatriots, other people like me that accepted me. So I went to a private school, and we were kind of groomed to all become doctors and lawyers and accountants and professionals. And it just wasn't for me. I knew that at the time. I knew that even before I was in high school. Like, I started writing quite young. So I knew that I just didn't fit in here. So New York represents a place that just accepts me as I am and values me as an artist.
Right.
And that's how I feel about New York. And then, all the other nostalgic, romantic things that we've all seen in the movies and stuff about New York City. And I've just had so many magical moments there. I try to spend as much time there as possible. Yeah.
Okay. Is that where you wrote?
So, okay. So my segueing to the book. So this
was that inelegant? I don't know.
And we have the New York City skyline.
Okay, so you're holding up a book. It says
Year of the what?
Year of the what?
Yes. So after I lived in New York for several years, I had an opportunity to move to Los Angeles and get into film and television, and I wanted to give it a shot. And after about a year and a half of pounding the pavement and not really getting in any of the doors I was trying to get into, somebody suggested I write myself a one-woman show as a vehicle. And that one-woman show is now my best-selling and award-winning novel. The show was titled Year of the Slut. I workshopped it in LA. I did it in New York. I won an award for it there. And then I was encouraged to adapt it into a novel.
Mm-hmm.
The original title was censored. I had to change the title and then relaunch and rebrand. But it ended up being a wise decision, because just changing one word in the title allowed it to get the exposure that it deserved. And now it's had many accolades. It won the gold medal at the Global Book Awards for coming of age books. It won the bronze medal at the Independent Publishing Awards for romance books, and several other awards I don't need to go into detail about, but it's been super exciting. So the book takes place in New York City.
Nice.
Because when I wrote it about, the play is about a naive girl from Canada who moves to New York and is kind of a fish out of water, and is looking for love after her first major breakup. And it's her dating misadventures trying to find the one.
Right.
So, yeah. So the book takes place in New York, and it's just such a special place in my heart, that city.
Year of the what? Formerly Year of the Slut. But is the play still seeing the light of day, or is that?
No, it was a one-woman show. I played 10 characters, and it was fun at the time, but also lonely, because one of the things that's like one of my favorite things about being an actor is getting to play with other actors.
Right.
So I'm so grateful that I did it, and I was able to prove to myself that I could play 10 completely different characters on one stage in an hour and a half, that I could actually do a show for an hour and a half and the audience doesn't leave after 20 minutes because it's terrible or boring. So I was able to really prove to myself that this is what I was meant to do with my life. Right. And even, because I did the show, I had been at it because I started performing as in university. I started taking acting classes, and it was almost a good 10 years before I did the show. And my parents never got it. They were never behind me. They never were, they're like, just come home, go back to school, get your master's, get a real job, have stability in your life, which are all good and fine and sound advice for a parent to give a child.
Sure.
Unless the child knows that they are born to be a creative beast, and there's nothing that can restrain that. So the play, after I won the award for it in New York, I kind of felt like it's run its course. Yeah. In terms of I just wasn't interested in doing it anymore. I proved to myself. My mom came to New York and saw it. She finally acknowledged, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. Okay. Because she also, the fact that I played all these characters, I wrote it, I did everything myself. She finally, it was blatantly in front of her, your daughter has talent, as opposed to watching other plays where I have some little bit role that's not a great production. Because I said, it's not like you show up and people just give you work.
Give it to you.
You got to work your way up through the small roles and the mediocre productions to get to the almost good productions, then to get to the better productions. And, and if you're lucky and stick with it long enough, then you get to do some great productions. But it's a long road. So so the play is not going on. The book is.
I'm just so excited about the idea of your training is about being on a stage and connecting with an audience that is in the room. And as you said earlier, in theater versus a kind of a temple, it's live, and that's the kind of the jeopardy, right?
Yes. You don't get a second take.
And how different that is from the writing process, which is you're by yourself. And it's actually quite a lonely moment where, at best, you're neurotically creating characters that you're invested in. So Do you feel like your transition from acting to writer is kind of, are you going, have you gone back to writing?
I've been bouncing back and forth. So I actually started writing when I was 8. I was in love with Zach Morris on Saved by the Bell. And I started writing like fan fiction scripts where like
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to Bayside and be his girlfriend. So I started writing at a young age, knowing that writing would help me get to performance.
Okay.
It was so weird that at 8, and
Mm-hmm.
at 12 I was actually able to articulate. I
Oh
At
wow.
12 years old, there was someone at summer camp who I told, my dream is to write my own movies and be in them. So
Mm-hmm.
even at 12, at this point in time, like you're middle school, like you have no agency, no autonomy in your life. But I knew
Yeah.
that I wanted to be an actor and that I wanted to be able to write the stories that I got to
Wow.
be in. Of course, as an actor, you want to be in everybody's stories. It's not just
Sure.
the ones that I write. It's like, yes, hire me, please.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be on a sitcom. I'd love to be on
Yeah.
a drama. I'd love to be in the movies, like anything, because that's just the nature of the industry.
Sure.
But I also knew that there was going to be that other element that I was going to be writing scripts, whether they were for stage or for screen. And I wrote my first movie script when I was 12. I wrote my first official one because at this point in time, I've written 6 feature film scripts. But that first one that I wrote,
Wow.
I was 19 and I wrote it when I was going to York. And because I knew when I got to New York, I wanted to have like a feature film script with me.
That, that is like, yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So the writing and the performance always kind of came in tandem. And that this is part of why my head was always in the clouds when I was a child, because I would be daydreaming myself into these scripts and
Mm-hmm.
stories that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to write. So I definitely flip flop because the pandemic in the past few years, I have not had the opportunity to perform as much as I would
Sure.
like. I shot a little promo video in March for my friend's lifestyle brand. She designs these workout outfits.
Okay.
So
Does it
that
have a
hasn't
name?
aired yet. Oh
Oh.
yes, my friend Nita Marquez has
Yeah.
this amazing company called On the Mark.
On the mark.
So On the Mark jumpsuits are what you
Awesome.
can Google if any of you ladies out there want a one-piece workout jumpsuit that you don't have to completely take off in order to go to the bathroom. She's got this special
Oh.
pattern that you could just pull down the tush
Mm-hmm.
and go to the bathroom, as opposed to having to like take off the straps and
Right.
pull down the whole leotard, which is
Right.
the number one thing that deters women from wearing a one piece,
Sure.
because it gets a little troublesome. So we did a promo for that. That hasn't come out yet. And then I also shot a short film that I wrote a few years ago. A
Oh,
friend of
nice.
mine directed it and produced it in LA in August. He asked me a few years ago for like if there was a script that
Mm-hmm.
he could have, like something that I wrote that I don't necessarily
Mm.
need to be a part of. So I gave that to him, and it's a short little comedy, and we're just
Oh,
in the
wow.
finishing touches. We're
Okay.
getting ready to send it to some film festivals.
Oh,
So it's not going to
nice.
air online. Basically, if you post your film online, that
Mm.
disqualifies it from getting into festivals.
Sure.
So it'll probably be a year or two before we'll post it online. We want to do some festivals first.
Nice. I hope that. Okay, so my daughter is 11,
Mm-hmm.
and she is extremely creatively oriented. Be it dance and singing and all
Wonderful.
this stuff. Yeah, for sure. And however she's made, I could totally see her express herself in a way that is fully aligned with how you speak. How do we connect your experience and, for example, your knowledge and the trials and the challenge of your life to a parent or to a person who recognize themselves in that? Like, how can we give them that little kernel of something that says, you just keep going, don't stop?
Yeah, I think you have to honor who your child is as opposed to who you wish them to be. I think there are a lot of parents out there, and definitely they have their child's best interest at heart. Like, I understand my parents were not deterring me from the entertainment business because they were being mean, but
Mm-hmm.
because it is a doozy of a
Yeah.
business.
It's really hard. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's hard to be successful, and even if you are successful, then there's the privacy factor, or the people, everyone wanting a piece of you, or scandals, because people are trying to ride your coattails, or
Yeah.
you're so exposed in that world. So I would definitely say you need to honor the individual that's in front of you, and every child, just like every human, is going to be an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we like to say, like, oh, well, she's only 8 or she's only 11, like she can change her mind 10 times. And it's like,
Sure.
yes, children can change their mind 10 times. But if they express an interest, nurture the interest
Yep.
until they're no longer interested.
Sure.
Like, my niece loved karate. She was really, really, really into karate. It was her thing. She was going 2-3 times a week. She was working her way up. I think she had like her purple belt. And then
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic happened and it was interrupted. Her
Yep.
lessons were interrupted. And she's not interested in going back to karate. She's interested in basketball now.
Okay.
And basketball is now her thing. And who knows that if it's because she's at an age where she wants to be more social and basketball is
Right.
where all her friends are. But that's the thing. I don't have children yet, but I see parents. It's like children go through stages. It's like they're totally, this is their sport, this is their thing, or like they're totally into Harry Potter, and then it like flips on a dime. They're not into it
Sure.
anymore. Now they're into this other thing. And so what?
Yep. I agree.
Nurture what they're doing as they're interested in it. And if they lose interest, they lose interest. And the thing is, it's like, at this stage of the game, it's a minimal investment, and even with extracurricular, most children, they're going to be in some sort of extracurricular thing at the time. Mm-hmm. Does it matter that you've spent X amount in karate and now it's basketball and not karate? No, because basketball costs money too. It's like,
sure,
you have a budget, you're spending X amount on extracurricular. It doesn't matter if they stay with the same sport until they become an expert level, or if they want to try 10 sports in 10 years. And how are they going to know what's for them unless they try them all?
Exactly. So, what kind of sport were you? Because I get that it's you're kind of a paradox in the sense that you are a creative. You definitely express yourself as, and I can hear things in terms of as a writer, or as a kind of as an actor, but also and as a performer. But there's also this side of you that's very strong in the sort of the physicality in the sports.
Yeah.
So what is, and I can see it on your face. So what was your sport, and what is your sport? Like, how are you in your body?
Yeah. So I was a competitive gymnast, and I was in competition. I was in provincials. So I was, going to provincial championships. I was in provincials, I think, by the time I was like 8 years old.
Wow.
I was doing provincial competitions, 8 or 9, something like that. I started competing in first grade. I think I was 5 because my birthday's in September. So I think I might have been 5.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. It's on Monday.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, I was 5, barely 6 years old when I started gymnastics competitions.
Wow.
And gymnastics is unlike any other sport.
Brutal. Gymnastics is the acting of sports. I don't know what
Yeah,
that means.
No, it really is, because it's like you need to have everything in order to master that sport. And that's the thing too. It's like you can take a gymnast and you can insert them into almost every sport and give them like a day or two, and they'll be able to become proficient at it, just because of the level of strength, agility, adaptability, coordination, flexibility. Sure. It like translates. Meanwhile, you take a ballet dancer, you put her on a balance beam, doesn't mean she's going to be able to,
sure.
or even.
We're going to start a huge war between just like all these like gymnasts. Watch out, the gymnasts are taking over. I love it.
Well, but the thing is, it's true because we have the 4 apparatuses. So it's like you need to be so conditioned.
Yeah.
In order to be able to do it, like the amount of upper body strength you need to be able to do the uneven bars. And what people don't understand if they're not in the sport is you can't compete on just one event. Only the Olympics have, a gold medal for the event. But you have to compete on all 4 events in order to do competition. So you have to be proficient at them all. So yeah, I was climbing out of my crib at 6 months old, and my mother just didn't know what to do with me and just like took me to because my mother's like, she's going to climb, she's going to do all these things anyways. I might as well put her in an environment where it's safe.
I love that consistency of training in gymnastics is comparable, and it like found a home on stage and found a home to be a writer, because to be like, this is like, you need that tenacity to keep going every day, keep,
and the discipline, and you're just up against yourself every day. Like it's a solo sport. So I definitely attribute my discipline, my confidence, my risk taking, because the type of risks you take when you're learning those new tricks, I attribute all of those things to my training as a gymnast. I think that was like a solid foundation, not just a physical foundation for me moving forward with my life, but all of the things that you have to face in terms of like
the hardships and for sure.
Yeah. And also like, when I was a kid, like I remember there was one competition where I didn't win a medal and I won a ribbon, and I threw the ribbon in the garbage, and my mother went and fished the ribbon. You know what I mean? Because, so like understanding and my own values of what's good enough and what's acceptable. And like, I didn't think a 5th place ribbon was even worth bringing home. Like I literally crumpled it up and threw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
I think I might've been 10, and I'm like, what? Forget this, but also pushing myself to be better, pushing myself to be better all the time. And so it was a great foundation for sure.
Okay. Well, New York state of mind, Jennifer Lieberman, I think we have so much material and we've covered so much ground. I just wonder, like, can you put this in a bouquet and put a bow on it and sum it all up, or do you think it's more messy? Like, how would you?
So I'd say, like, if you wanted to sum up my life and my achievements in one little sentence, nobody would let me in the door, so I went and built my own house.
Nice.
That's kind of how I feel about my career at this stage.
There we go. Jen, that's perfect.
Thanks.
Here, I'm giving you my elbow. There you go. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for all your patience. We made it. We got it done.
Yay. Thank you too.
You're
and thank
awesome.
You for your patience. Seriously, the past month has been insane. Book events, Toronto Film Festival. Like I was running around TIFF like a chicken with my head cut off. So thank you for your patience and for not giving up on me.
Jen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ren.
These things always end in a really kind of awkward way.
I know.
I'll edit it. Don't worry.
Well, thank you so much, and keep me posted and stay in touch. And I look forward to the link when it's ready.
Yep.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.